继续用英语来解说我们将来的问题。最后我会总结我的演讲，用几分钟的话语。谢谢各位。Friends and fellow citizens, two great events in my lifetime have shaped the contours of the present world. One was the rise and fall of fascism. The other is the rise and fall of communism. It's been the two great climacteric events of this century. The fascists tried to shape a different world which believed in racial superiority. The Germans believed that, well, the Nazis, sorry, not the present West Germans. They believed they were superior because they got blue eyes, blonde hair, they're bigger than others, and they're better than anybody else, so they ought to populate the whole of Europe and eventually the whole of the world. That's been laid to rest. Japan, in a not altogether a different way, was also that way. And that also, I hope, has been laid to rest. But since 1945, when fascism was scrubbed out, we have been preoccupied with a communist challenge. I did not believe that I would live to see it totally debunked and deflated. It's a failure, and admitted as such. And if we can take one single event that signified the end of it, it was the collapse, the fall of the Berlin Wall. They could not create their superior world. They could not keep their communist flock. It was an inferior system that couldn't feed them, that couldn't give them the comforts of life, that was backward in every way. Backward industries polluting the whole country, backward consumer goods, inadequate food, just good propaganda. They kept that up for a long time and captured and mesmerized a whole generation of young men and women in Singapore. The myth of a glorious China. I lived through that. I had to put up with it. I had to fight them because I didn't believe it. But they believed it. Now, what next? Frankly, nobody knows. They say, yes, we must keep NATO. I asked an American whom I've known in Europe. I've known him for many years. He's a very frank, and most Americans are very frank, outspoken people. I said, what happens now? He says, in his very forthcoming American way, he says, really can't say. Everybody says we have to keep NATO. I said, yes, but the Russian enemy, the Soviet enemy, kept NATO together. Now you haven't got an enemy. What will keep it together? Old habits? For how long? Nobody knows. In other words, a new global balance has to be found and will be established, because it is in the nature of human beings to fill up a vacuum. Somebody has vacated the role of adversary. We can't always be friends. I mean, you need an opposition team to win a gold medal or a cup. And human beings like competitions. Maybe they will learn how to compete in a peaceful way, because there could be very different challenges and different problems. Meanwhile, all relationships, international relationships, we can look at afresh, re-examine them, to see whether the old is still relevant in these new circumstances. For instance, this north-south divide. Yes, the South will always want more because they are deprived. They feel that the Europeans and then the Americans and then the Japanese as industrial powers who made the leap into the new industrial high-tech society first, have shortchanged them, made use of them, exploited their resources, their labor, their markets. But there's no more Soviet-American rivalry to exploit. It's Saddam Hussein's first mistake. In the old Brezhnev, Reagan, or better still, Brezhnev-Nixon years, or Brezhnev-Ford years, there wouldn't have been a Security Council resolution. Automatically there would have been a veto. And even if they withdrew, because it might threaten a world war, it will be on terms and a lot of very difficult bargaining. So in that case, you withdraw from the West Bank. You know, I mean, it's the kind of bargain which Saddam Hussein must have learned from Khrushchev. He says, you want my missiles in Cuba to be removed, you take your missiles from Turkey out. The two are not related. One, the Turks are part of NATO. But says, never mind, 1-for-1. Nearly led to a world confrontation. I don't know how this is going to be resolved, but I do know the way it is resolved is going to decide the kind of world we live in. But to come back first and deal with our internal problems, and then we see it against this new backdrop. Internally, things couldn't be better. The Communist Party has signed an agreement to destroy their arms. Of course, our experts don't believe they destroyed every arm. They think there are hidden catches. Must be. It's common sense. But whether they can ever go back to them and raise another guerrilla army, that's very doubtful. Because the clarion call that stirred young men's blood no longer credible. They want to go back to Malaysia. Many hundreds of them. A few tens claim they come from Singapore. They want to come back. Happy to have good, hard-working citizens. But let's have no more of this. Proper rehabilitation procedures must be observed. We do not want any more. One try is enough, they fail, that's it. And they, of course, commanded when they were at the height of the capacity to attract recruits. They commanded my respect, even awe. It's not possible to tell another generation about what it was like then. But I'll give this anecdote and you will remember that it left a very strong imprint on my generation. And we do not want any form of communist revival at all, whether democratic or undemocratic. Let's have none of it. In 1961, when we were still with pro-communists and some communists in the PAP, and we were parting ways, I had a message from the leader of the Communist Party who was in charge of Singapore, whom I had met on 4 previous occasions before I took office. But 61, I had already taken office and I was Prime Minister. Of course, I had an Internal Security Council sitting over me with the British as chairman, and the Malaysians also represented, so we could be outvoted. I met him. He wanted to see me, I met him. I was taking my life into my own hands. Here I was, head of a government supposed to be cleaning up the communists, privately meeting in secret with the enemy. Could well have been arrested and detained, would have been quite an unpleasant business. He wanted us, or he wanted me to carry on. Don't break, don't quarrel. They will support us. We will ensure that we will abolish the Internal Security Act and the Internal Security Council. I thought to myself, now why does he think that I'm prepared to put my head and neck into his jaws? You see, we had a marvelous arrangement. The Singapore government is not going to arrest him, but the Internal Security Council will arrest him, and the Singapore government is outvoted. 3 British votes, 1 Malaysian vote, 3 Singapore votes. So it says abolish that. I laughed, I smiled, I said, well, the answer is no. Within a matter of days, signal went out, knock the PAP down, kick it out of office. Robust approach. Also a ghastly mistake. If they had won, we would be impoverished and destroyed. But they didn't, and I see no reason why any communist should be given a second try, whether by democratic or by democratic plus undercover methods. There are some aging diehards who will not give up, just like Chia Tai Po. I admire him. I respect him. He keeps on denying it because that's the way he's been conditioned to react. But if he's watching me tonight, since he has not much entertainment in Sentosa after dark. Let me let out why we think he has not changed. Because we had monitors on him. And every time there was bad news for the communists, he was very sick and unhappy for days, hours and days. So, you see, he hasn't changed. I just cannot understand how an able, rational man. He was a physics graduate of Nantau University. He became an assistant lecturer after he graduated. So this is no mean intellect. This is not a feeble mind. But why he believes this, I will never understand. Why he does not come to the conclusion that all this was a ghastly mistake. Cut losses. Get back to life. You can't make up for 30 lost years. He started it when he was a student in Nanyang. Even in Chinese high school before, in high school before Nanyang. But because of that experience, I say, better the remnants, let them age, let them fade away. Let's have no more multipliers, however diluted they may be.